Welcome to Exploring the Mystical Side of Life with your host, Linda Lang.
Hi, this is Linda Lang from ThoughtChange.com. I'm here exploring the mystical side of life this week with the Good Luck Lady, Flora Elmore. Flora's been a guest on this podcast previously, and I'm delighted to have her back today. Welcome, Flora.
Hi, Linda. How are you?
I am good, and I'm very excited about our topic. This week, we're talking about rituals. So perhaps we can start off by having a definition of what a ritual is.
To me, a ritual is a consistent act of engaging the sacred. Just keep it very simple. So a ritual is something that we would do consistently to engage the sacred that's within us, the sacred, the good that's in us, the God aspects that are in us. And it's a time when we do that engagement, it sets up a time for us to have a conversation with that sacredness and feed the soul, feed the mind, and feed the body in ways that we can't find through television or something else. And that's probably why a lot of people really enjoy going to church, because it gives them that moment. And there's a lot, there's so many churches that have big rituals as part of their process of engaging the congregation, but those rituals are the same. Like, I'll give an instance because I attended Catholic church for many, many years. The ritual of communion, the ritual of the reading, the ritual of giving a sign of peace to your neighbor, all of those things are consistent, and you know what you're going to get no matter where you go in the world. Catholic Mass is going to be about the same. So ritual is that. And I have daily rituals that I do, and I have monthly rituals that I do, just so that I'm constantly keeping my mind engaged with the sacred and I'm in alignment with my right actions.
I think that one's intent is probably the most important part.
Sure, your intent when you go in to engage the sacred is big. Because if you're going in because you're upset, because you're really mad at somebody and you want to have revenge, that sacred's going to be like, I'm on a smoke break, call me later. You're not going to get what you want. It'll feel very dead and just flat. Like, for people who are working on their luck, I'm very fascinated by people who have like a streak of good luck and what their consistent rituals are. There's a golf player that I read about one time who wore the same pair of socks every time he went to the finals tournament. And one day the socks got a hole in them, and he was so worried about it, but he put those same socks on and he won just like he normally does. He went to his wife and he said, "You're going to have to darn these socks." Well, she darned them with a different color, and it set him off, and his mind just disengaged from that pair of socks. So he had to go out and search to find another pair of socks. But it wasn't so much the socks, it was how he was putting on the socks and what he did right before he put on the socks that would engage his mind. The other people that I talk about that I've met that have huge streaks of luck in their life, or their luck changes, they change their routines and they change their personal rituals. And those personal rituals put them in the mindset of being lucky. They put them in the mindset of, I am open for opportunity and I have prepared for this. There's a lady named Twyla Thorpe that wrote a book about performing rituals and like performance. She's a choreographer, and she talks about her system of every day going to the gym, and that slowly starts to put her mind into the headspace where she gets into almost the sacredness of her work. Different performers do this, and I was a pianist and violinist for many, many years. I had those same certain rituals just right before, and it was practice. And that's what ritual is sometimes, is practicing putting our intent into action.
So one of the things that struck me as you were talking is the difference between the energy that the ritual holds. You know, we have things like morphogenic fields that build the energy of repetition. So we have that energy kind of built into some of these rituals. And then we have our intent. So we can have our own individual rituals and our perspectives. It's not just intent, it's intent, the energy that we're putting into our actions as we're doing the intent, and how focused and attentive we are while we're doing it. And those things can be very complementary or not. And I just wonder what you thought was the most important.
Well, I see both. I see what you're saying about building energy in a space. I have a set of daily rituals that engage my luck. And I treat luck as an energy, just like I treat money as an energy. And I have, over the years, the more consistent that I have been with engaging my luck every day, the more resilient that energy has become to when I get knocked off of my path, like because of pandemic or whatever, the routine gets knocked out of the way, I can rely on my luck to show up. I can rely on money to show up. I can rely on my good health to show up because I give good intent to that on a daily basis. It's kind of like if you ignore dusting your house, it's going to get a thick layer of dirt on it. The same goes for the energy that you constantly are feeding intent to. If you just suddenly one day cut it off, over time it shrinks and becomes nothing and you have to start over. So on a daily basis, I get in the shower and I have a specific type of soap that I like to use, and I call it my luck soap. But as I'm washing my body, I think about all the obligations that are limiting my luck and all the distractions that are limiting me from my fullest potential. And I see them going down the drain with all the suds and everything. And then also people's jealousy towards something I might have accomplished. I forgive them and I let their jealousy wash down the drain. I may not even know who they are. I don't care. I'm happy for them that they're going to find their way and that they're going to get what they need, but that it's not stuck to me. Because there is a component of luck where the people react to you. It impacts your energy. And so you wash that away. And then I also light a candle every morning. It's a small little tea light candle. I used to, when I was younger, I needed the biggest candles on the planet and, stuff that you do when you're a kid, and to make more is better. Not so much, not anymore, because I've built that energy up. And so I'll light a candle and I will acknowledge my luck. I acknowledge my good fortune and I say thank you. That's my gratitude candle. Every day I give gratitude and I let that candle hold that energy for me while I might piddle around the house and get ready for the day. So I have those, but at night I do a practice of recapitulation and I see where I have used my energy, maybe my intent, too much, like I wasted it, and I draw it back into me. And I put it in the form of a wish bird, and I usually send it for something to improve the planet at this point and feed the energy of the planet in a good and intentive way. Sometimes I send it as healing. I've been doing a lot of healing work for my community. And so I do those things as part of my luck work and my rituals every day. As soon as I turn the water on for the shower, because I do it in the same way every day, my headspace and my heart space go into, it's time to focus on this now. Leave the distractions of what's going on in the house and work and everything. Leave those behind. This is time for you to engage your luck. This is time for you to forgive. This is time for you to wash away those obligations you no longer need. And then when I light that candle, it puts me in that headspace to focus on what I truly am grateful for and not distracted by. And then sometimes I will light that candle and I'll actually hear coins dropping, or I'll hear the casino going, those types of things that we associate with luck. But then I'll also hear people thanking me for helping. You never know what I'm going to hear because I'm a very clairaudient person, but it does build that energy. And so I can give this other example. My mother, I had to do an emergency run to go and see her. So my whole day, my whole routine was off, and she lives in a whole other town. This is 4 a.m. I just got in the car and went. Because I already had those systems in place, my body was like, it's 8:30. We're supposed to be in the shower. So I visualized myself being in the shower and going through my routine. It's 9 o'clock. We're supposed to be lighting our gratitude candle. I lit my gratitude candle in my mind as I'm driving. It got done because my body had already been in that and my headspace was there. By the time I got to my mother, I was very clear-headed. I helped her make some really good decisions about her health. So those rituals build their own kind of egregore, their own kind of energy. And that way, so when we get thrown off and we miss a few days, it isn't completely over. It waits for us to get back.
And repetition is important.
Consistent repetition, yes. It's just like pianists learn a piece of music, they have to practice every day, so they have to show up for it. They can't just wish it to be able to play some Beethoven. It doesn't work that way. They have to show up.
And I think it's important. Let's take the golfer, for instance. It wasn't his socks that were lucky. It was his belief that the socks were lucky.
Lucky. Exactly. His intent was there, definitely, that those were what were holding his luck. There's people that will have like mojo bags made for their luck, things like that. Those are a form of sympathetic magic, or they hold energy. And people treat them as living things because they begin to build so much energy over time.
By sympathetic, you're not talking about the emotion. You're talking more about the sympathetic nervous system. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect.
So it attaches to our energy and we send it. And so it acts sympathetically, like we set our intent into it, and that's what it means. And also it kind of is the emotion because it's sympathetic to what we're asking it to do. But people like in the southern part of the United States used to build a gree bag or a mojo bag, and they would carry it with them. Native Americans, it isn't the same as a medicine bag, but it can be similar. It would hold energy that represented their power. And so for a mojo bag, it would represent the power of their luck. And so people would fill it. But we have people that wear jewelry that's like, I wear a little ladybug and it's from my husband because he loves me, but ladybugs are very lucky and I'm his good luck lady. So it's one of those things where people do it. They'll wear a ring that brings good luck, or their shirt. They hold energy into that so that when they put it on or when they carry it, it gets them into that headspace to be right in an alignment with their luck or their opportunity.
And I would suspect that it's really important that they really feel a resonance or a connection with that ritual.
Yes. I first started on this path of occult work, and I say occult in the sense that it means tapping into the mystery or into the unseen. When I started this, I was 19 years old, and I got very involved with a group of ceremonial magicians, and they are very big on daily ritual. There's a whole system of magic that they do, that you get up, you put on a certain robe, you do certain calls to the different directions, you say certain prayers, you cleanse your area. It's very regimented. And I probably did that for 10 years. I was very devoted to that practice. And what would happen is that it would put me into a sacred space within myself where I could examine my belief systems and see if they were true to me, or if they were something that society was showing me should be true to me, but it really wasn't. And if I would have any kind of dark feelings come up or something like that, and when I say dark feelings, I mean like extreme political anger. I'll just put that out there because we have a lot of that in our country right now. But back then, the idealism in a 20-year-old was very evident in me. I had very strong opinions about everything. That ritual, that daily ritual, and that space that it would give me with my own sacredness would make me say, is this true for me? Is this really what my path is? Is this who I am? Why am I perpetuating this conversation at a society level when that's not who I am? So it started to make me not question myself, but decide what was authentically mine. And ritual does that for us. Whenever we are in that sacred space, we can examine really heavy internal topics, not in a type of meditation so much, because meditation can do that, but the intent of meditation is to give you quiet space for yourself. It's the quiet game for your soul sometimes is what I think it is. But ritual puts you into a space where you can journal. I have a friend who is just a huge journaler, and that's what she does. Her ritual is to set a glass of water and a candle down, and she journals. And sometimes she'll journal for 3 hours and come out of it, and she's really processed a soul conversation. And the sacred response that comes back to her is so healing.
have you been able to share your rituals or enrich other people's lives with ritual?
My husband and I had a house where we considered it a safe space for people who, no matter what flavor of spirituality they practiced, but they would gather at our house, and sometimes it was through consensus. They would a spontaneous ritual would be created, and then they would want to replicate that every month, and it would begin to build friendships and partnerships and a sense of community, even though they all practiced something different. So I did have a women's group that came to my home, and it was considered kind of an interfaith group because everybody was very, very different. And I had women who were bishops, and I had women who would call themselves wild witches of the netherworlds. I mean, I had everybody. And what I would do is I would set up a focal point, and it would be a big altar. And I asked everybody to bring something in. And it wasn't a traditional altar like you might see in a church. It was round because I wanted everybody to be able to have a different aspect of it. And it was multi-layered because it represented the multi-layered aspects of who we were, all different colors. I would do that at least once a month. And it wasn't corresponding to any moon phase or anything, because a lot of people do that. And I agree that that is something that is great. But we would create and establish a safe space. And it turned into a book club after time, but it was a time for people to bring their spiritual book in to say, here are the women in this book, and these are the rituals that they did. The one woman who was a bishop, she brought in foot washing because of how many women in the Bible washed feet. And we learned that practice of anointment. And then one woman, she practiced an African religion, and she brought in a Sacred Woman book, and we went through that entire book, which was life-changing for all of us. And so we built jewelry around that, and we always wore the jewelry, and we always brought something to put on the altar from our past experience in this. It became an anchor, and after we moved from there, it splintered off, and it was kind of neat because the women that were the anchors that always showed up to the rituals, they went off and began building those rituals for their own inner community of women. And those women, of course, loved it because they had never experienced anything like that. But it also allowed the women who were the anchors in our group to become leaders. And I've actually seen a reference to it in one of my daughter's feminism books. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they referenced our Women of the World ritual, which was probably the most powerful ritual I've ever been in. Once a year, June 21st, a group of random women would get together, and myself and one other woman would research big events happening to women, some of them negative, some of them positive, things that needed to be healed for women in the world and things that needed to be exalted more for women in the world. And we had this huge long string. Every woman would come in and bring a bead. And I would write out on the index cards, like, just imagine there's a woman in the world named Flora, and her head was shorn in her community because she lied to a judge. And this actually happened. It happened in the eastern part of Europe at the time that ritual was going on. But as her punishment, the judge had her publicly shorn, and she had to keep her head shaved for an entire year so that the public would know that she was a liar in court. And he didn't ever do that to a man. He did it to her and made a public example out of her. And so the injustice of it was unbelievable. But then we also had a woman who won a Nobel Peace Prize that year for a book that she had written that was changed public policy around the world in many places. And so we had that. And once they read the statement and we shared our emotion about the story or what we felt like would be justice, that woman would put her bead on this string. And my daughter was 3 years old at this time, and she would come to these rituals with us. And somebody finally asked her, Audrey, what would you do? And she grabbed this bead and she said, this bead is for all the girls who are going to fight the monsters later in the world. And she put that bead on there. And the crone, the woman that was sitting beside me, was just in huge tears. And I said, why are you crying? And she said, because I can't imagine ever saying that when I was 3 years old. I wouldn't have had the courage. I wouldn't have had the courage in the 40s to say that out loud, because we don't fight monsters. At my age at that time, we tolerated them. We tolerated the monsters in our community because we didn't want to get noticed, because if we got noticed, we might be in trouble. So that opened up a whole other dialogue of healing. And so this chain of beads has been going around for 14 or 15 years now. And at one point, the anchors of that ritual decided that we would take sections of that and tie it off and attach it to somebody else's beads. And it's all over the US at this point. And so the process, it begins in March, and we really begin researching what's happened the year before, what still needs energy and what needs to change. And some powerful things have come out of that ritual. And what's said during the ritual is kept there in that sacred space. And so that ritual, because it consistently happened June 21st every year, women started just showing up. We just invited the people that we knew, but then we started having people coming from all over the US to show up for this ritual. It was really amazing.
How amazing.
Yeah, it was
amazing.
So what I would do is if you have something that you find that you think needs to be addressed at a spiritual level, start with a small group of friends and say, I want to start having a monthly ritual. It could be having a meal together to just talk about something and process out what you're seeing and what the television's showing, or book, like the book engaged us as doing a sacred woman work. And it was a book that we probably would have never known about, but because I would have never thought about looking at an African history book. Not because I wouldn't want to, just because I just didn't even know it was there. And so be open, be completely open, and have the group begin with a small group of friends, and you all agree for 1 year to consistently show up at the same time, each person bringing something to the table. And no matter what it is, and be non-judgmental about it. Because there was some crazy stuff that showed up on that altar. Sometimes I was like, I can't even believe that's there. And then one of the women in our group was a nun, and she brought her habit and placed it on the altar. And she talked about the sacredness of hijab for Islamic women, and then her habit and what that meant, and that it wasn't oppressive. It was actually safety. And that opened up a conversation about how much our society was demonizing situations and using women as the crux, that we needed to be protected, and maybe we don't need to be protected in that way. So that ritual, it opens conversation. And so I would encourage the people that are listening to start with a small group of friends, and it will grow by word of mouth. You don't need to advertise.
For many years, I had a women's group who met for shamanic journeys, and we actually wrote an opening prayer or invocation, if you like, and each person contributed a line, and we would start each journey with that opening. And it was an extremely powerful ritual to get us all in the space and to connect us. And we had a lot of magic that happened through that.
Absolutely. It's the fact that everybody brought something to the table. Everybody brought a phrase or a statement because they're invested in it then.
But you can do rituals solely on your own, like
Absolutely.
your ritual of lighting a candle before you meditate or before you do almost anything, really.
Right. I'll share something with you all. I do genealogy, and I was talking to you about this at another time. And before I engage my ancestors in this genealogy research, I actually say a prayer to them, almost an invocation, and it's sacred ancestors who left some essence of their self in my mother's womb so that I would thrive. I call to you this day and in this hour to witness my wholeness in the work that I do. May all that I do bring blessings to our descendants. That little ritual invites them to help me. It invites them to help me. And it also says thank you, because without them, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be thriving.
And I would say it probably also opens you unconsciously
Yes.
up to receive from them as well.
I found all kinds of things because of that. I found out all kinds of information about my family's history by having a conversation with them. And no matter if people believe that our ancestors move on to the other side and are engaged spiritually with us through the spirit world or not. It still opens us up to that blood conversation with them.
Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up, Flora?
Only that I believe that whenever you start engaging in ritual, it helps you survive things like a pandemic. I really do. Like the prayer or the invocation work that your women did in your shamanic circle, I bet if you went back today and you read that, all of you all would contact each other within the next month. It keeps people connected in a way that's very deep and personal. And when we do personal ritual, just individualized ritual, that same level of connection happens with the sacred. It's like a phone call. Ritual is a phone call to the divine.
Cross your fingers for me.
I will. There is an old practice within the Rosicrucian thought system that when you go for a job interview or you're working out a relationship or you need a loan or you need something, you cross both of your fingers and you put your hands behind you as you walk out the door.
Beautiful. Flora, where can people connect with you?
They can connect with me on Instagram. I'm on there as Flora Elmore. So that's the best and easiest way to connect with me now. So I hope people do. I hope you come over and say hi on Instagram, and I'll post all kinds of crazy stuff. I have no filter. I'll just admit that now. So
All good, all good. I'll make sure to post that in the show notes.
sure.
I'd also like to invite you to have a read of an article I wrote for The Magic Happens Now on rituals and how you can bring rituals into your life. So I'll post the link in the show notes for that as well.
Fantastic.
Thank you for being my guest this week, Flora. It's always a
I'm
joy.
happy to be here, Linda. I love you.
It's so sweet. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for listening to this week's episode of Exploring the Mystical Side of Life. You'll find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Anchor.fm. Come and visit me at thoughtchange.com and learn what energy medicine can do for you. While you're there, check out my new program, Alchemy from the Inside Out. That's it for this week. Bye for now.